Know Thyself is dedicated to the exploration of the most rewarding task an individual can ever embark on, the journey to find oneself. Our intention is to investigate the universal principles that have equipped our species to seek the treasure of all treasures, self-knowledge. With your host, Daniel Powinski and Eduardo Manteca, this is the Know Thyself podcast. Ready to go. Sweet. Let me just see how it's looking. Check, check.
Check, check.
Sweet. All right. Welcome to the Know Thyself podcast.
Hello.
How's it going, man?
My man.
I'm here with Daniel. I'm Eduardo, and dude, I can't believe we're here. I really can't believe it came so quick. The seven stages as they've been unfolding, like, have definitely been something that I look forward to every week, and to finally get to the seventh is
Right.
major, you know?
Right.
So I'm excited, man.
Yeah. And you know what the cool thing is too, is we get to now we almost call upon this information moving forward in the podcast. And that's what's really cool about this, is we just really made a really strong new pillar principle by learning the science, the 7 steps of alchemy, right?
The seventh of all the stages or the steps in alchemy, and that being coagulation. And I really like how it's presented as making that permanent golden moment, right? We always talk about raising ourselves to the next octave, but I really like that it's defined here on what that really means. And so, yeah, let's go into it, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, no. And it's because there's always going to be this attraction to completion. It's something that we kind of crave because we are creators. So there's always going to be this some sort of attraction about completion. You know, like you get so excited about like the trilogy of a movie or,
right.
You know, that aspect. And 3, it's just such a powerful thing. So when we do get to see this completion, it's really exciting too, because to really understand this process, part of understanding the completion is part of understanding the beginning.
Right.
And that's what we're really kind of moving towards, because this is the last note in this octave. And if you kind of think about it, you're always kind of preparing yourself in the alchemical process. You're doing the step that you're doing, but the reason why you're doing it is because it needs to precede the next step for the next step to be successful. So a lot of times you're dealing with the process of that step, but you're also kind of already dealing with the step that you're about to go into, because you're almost creating a medium for that step to take place.
Right.
Right.
That makes sense.
So the 7 is very much getting us ready for the 1. So we're about to restart again. And the completion and the infinite nature of this teaching is really what is one of the big, strong aspects of this, the greater stone.
Yeah.
And really kind of grasping with the idea of the infinite while grasping with the idea of being finite.
Right.
And it's that combination, and it's that utilization of these together.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what we're putting together. This is the lesser stone with the greater stone. But you have to put those 2 aspects together. You have to put your immortality and your mortality together, because that's how you're going to really create, and that's how you're really going to evolve consciously. Because truth be told, even though you're physically, you know, your time here is finite in the physical body, we have touched the above and we brought the above down. So there's this deep sense of confidence and security, because we know energy does not die.
Right.
So it just moves. And that's physical science. If you went to the most state-controlled science classroom probably in the world, they're probably still going to give you that conclusion, that energy doesn't dissipate. You know, I don't know about super tyrannical places. You know, I don't know about their education systems, but this is common knowledge in most people, most educated individuals.
Right.
You know, so we're just seeing its reflection as above, so below. So we see it in the physical makeup, and it corresponds to the above.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. When you have that connection, and you're, you know, part of the materia prima that we've talked about before, but in this case, that glow that you carry through is having that experience of touching the above to the below, and also to bring that to, you know, everyone else. We talked about, you know, now having the ability to create with that intent, that is, you know, the connection that you've made and you've brought back down. And that's the key, you know, And I like that you talk about the confidence that comes with it, because I know that you kind of have this sort of this permanent way of always thinking at a higher level that in turn becomes, hopefully easier and easier. And it can even be said that it happens to individuals, when they're quote unquote going through a process of enlightenment. The pineal gland and all the hormones are more regulated in an individual like that, which when you see them, you're like, man, there's something just different about it. It's not just maybe your intake of certain nutrition or whatever. There's something vital about this individual.
Yeah.
And it's because that connection is also happening on a cellular level that's allowing that individual to have that glow that we talk about, so yeah.
Yeah. And that's the golden fleece of Hercules. This is the golden fleece. Nice. That's that glow. We hear about this in mythology, the golden capes, and the feminine a lot of times were the silver cape to kind of represent those two aspects. But that's what we're looking for, is that glow and that golden fleece is that it's that connection to that vertical axis.
Right.
And that's really what you're tapping into when you activate the sulfur, which is the left side of the brain, right? The sun, and the mercury, which is the moon.
Right?
The moon. Thank you for
feminine energy.
The feminine energy, and it's the coming together of those aspects, which allows you access to the vertical axis.
Right.
So that's when you're really tapping into this above information. And what this golden fleece does in the story of Hercules is, and that's a beautiful story because you work your way through the 12 zodiacs, like the 12 labors of Hercules, is he's just going through the 12 signs of the zodiac. It's a beautiful story, broken down really, really greatly by a theosophy individual named Alice Bailey. So if you ever want a good read, that's a great one. It's The Labors of Hercules. But what we kind of see in that story is the creation of a spiritual warrior. And that's just something you kind of get drafted in this stage of evolutionary consciousness. And really consciousness, unless it was like Egypt or some other sacred location like that, consciousness is usually being fought against. It's usually not being promoted by, organizations. So when you kind of take this on and you tap into this vertical access, one thing that kind of comes with it with that golden fleece is that spiritual warrior. But the warrior, not so much as like an aggressive warrior, it leads by example. Right. It leads with the glow, but really the bravery and the courage to face not only its own spiritual demons, but to take on collective consciousness, spiritual demons, through their actions, through their organizations, through their words. They understand that the battle is always being fought for consciousness. And they understand that they can be part of the butterfly of consciousness, or they can stay a caterpillar,
right?
Because it has that choice. And that's why they become that spiritual warrior. But you get this with this seventh stone, it's just like this gold sun badge that you almost get awarded. And it's only like the only true badge. It's the badge of you've made it through the planets.
Yeah.
You've gone through the rainbow. Like you've got the 7. So, and we need this because we're going now into the next octave. So we need bravery. We need courage. We need bravery and courage higher than we could understand on the physical realm. We needed spiritual bravery and spiritual courage.
Right.
And what was this process? This process was taking ourselves through hell so the universe wouldn't have to do it for us. Because we know we had to go through hell. We know we had to go through Dante's Inferno. And that's what we were doing in this situation. We were going through hell and we put ourselves through hell. So we have strengthened. It's like the muscle. We ripped those muscles of weakness, of laziness, of jealousy, and we regrew them with the higher aspects of that energy. Mm-hmm. And it's part of that glow because that's what makes you glow because you have no blockages.
Right.
Life force is coming through you. It's like why when you look at a dolphin, you're like, why am I just so happy? It's because that life force is just completely radiating.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you can feel it. And we have all these blocks because of calcination. Right. And we have all these wounds because of dissolution and we stay between those two. Mm-hmm. So what we did is we went beyond the boundaries of the town.
Yeah.
We're like Sam in Lord of the Rings when he's just like, this is the farthest I've ever been.
Yeah.
That was us. Yeah. That was the story. And so when we kind of look at that, this glow that comes from it and this spiritual warriorship it's the courage to not only be the example, but to keep going as well. Because again, this is all about the ending is the beginning, right? It's the Alpha Omega. It's the Ouroboros, It's the snake that eats its own tail. And that's what we're coming back around. The start is the finish. So it's to connect with that, then that's going through this process is what gives you actually to understand even a glimpse of the infinite, because you see the whole completion of everything. Right.
So, and that's most likely the goal, right? I mean, after we learn, what's been handed to us or what we've subjected ourselves to during this rigorous process that we've done onto ourselves, so that we wouldn't have to go through it by the choices, as we were saying, the universe. I know that, you start to think about, well, now what, from here on out, how do I stay at this elevated sense, and how do I carry that touch of the sun that I know exists? How does it, reignite once there's some sort of dim period again? Do you read all 7 steps? Do you reintroduce principles that you already know in your heart are true, but somehow they're not resonating with you? What do you have to say about like the thereafter?
So what, like before because that's a great question, but let's because we were kind of talking about the end, we haven't really let's go over kind of the 7-step, and then we're going to kind of make our way of how we kind of apply this, because it's kind of part of the story. So what we'll do is we'll just kind of drop the basics on that. So what we're kind of just looking for is the coagulation. The process of this is liquid changing to a solid. Right. So this really has to do with kind of like that liquid changing to the solid, and coagulation very much is a medical term for clotting of blood. Mm-hmm. So it usually has to do with blood. And there's a reason for this, is because blood is the life force of the body. Right. It's what carries oxygen. It carries the air, which is the spirit. Mm-hmm. Right. So this is it brings that highly oxygenated, that highly spiritualized essence and energy into all the vital organs of your body. Right. This is how we operate. Right. So it's that life force. So again, this is going to be the blood. This is the oil of that glow. Because now if you you're utilizing those breathing exercises that you would be picking up in this process, you're thinking about, your diet, your thoughts, everything has been purified through this process. You're going to be a healthier individual. So that life force is just moving through you, just like we were kind of just speaking about. So what this coagulation does is the alchemical life force up to this point has been bleeding out of the body. Prior to alchemy, the alchemical life force was just bleeding out of the body ever since the creation and the crowning of the false ego. We didn't have the ability to stop the bleeding and then stop the wastage of life force energy. Right. Because it comes out. And again, this isn't just a physical thing. This is how we use the life force energy prior to spiritual development, prior to this alchemical process, prior to anybody else's just independent individual work they've done on themselves, right? We know this experience when we used to waste our life force energy. And even as spiritual individuals now, we have to be honest with ourselves that we still waste spiritual energy all the time. Even though we are like getting better and better, and that's awesome. But like, to be honest with yourself, like I know there's some times that I'm just like, oh, that was a waste of, vital time that I could have utilized it for something else. Right. And I kind of fell back into a pattern. Just that pattern has presented itself through a different color, through a different flower. Right. And I'm just like, oh, that's a pretty flower. And I pick it. And then I'm like, oh, that was the same thing. That's something I've been fixing. Right. So we always are kind of bleeding this force. So prior to this, we were almost like hemophiliacs with life force energy, where the leaks were coming out, where they were actually like the deep wounds and the surface wounds where that energy was actually coming out. We didn't have the ability to clot it, to stop it, and to make it heal. So we would just bleed out life force energy. So coagulation is that process of turning the liquid into the solid, which is also the combining of the body, which is made spiritual, and the spirit, which is going to be made flesh. So you go from, liquid to physical to liquid. It's that aspect of the body has been made spiritual through this aspect, and the spirit has been made flesh, which is like the prophet, and that's again why we have there's so much Christian connections, deep esoteric Christian connections to alchemy, right? And all of the esoteric esoteric teachings. And these unhealed wounds of the past were always constantly kind of draining life force, the spiritual life force. And as a result of that, we were very much spiritually dead. Because that deep esoteric final aspect energy is just leaking out of our bodies because we've made these unique errors in the past, and like these patterns have kind of created themselves. Is that making sense?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, you'll find someone with the ability to, keep that drainage, as we're using as an example, from leaking out at a much later year or much later time in their physical life, because they've had to have the universe show them the value of what they are and what they should be connected to at all times. And generally when you do meet someone, they'll tell you firsthand, like, I wasted a lot of time and a lot of my will and energy that and life force that I'm given on really just nothing of value until now, and then
Right.
So they'll have this whole story that follows that up. So again, you either meet people who did do the journey on their own, as we were saying, or the universe does it for you. So it does make sense what you're saying, like how that leakage does occur, and you can see when it's happening to someone, and you can see when someone hasn't really, recognized that that's what's actively happening. So,
Right. Yeah. And, this is a great one to look in. You can use your environment as a classroom to pick out how energy is wasted, because sometimes it's easier to see others wasting energy. To kind of be like, oh, that's an energy waster. Like you can almost learn a lesson through watching other people through that aspect, kind of like through talking. Like I love my niece and nephew, but they're this younger generation. They're so attached to the phones and the social media. It's just so like, it's such this like living through somebody else, and they spend so much time on it. And it's just so, from like my perspective, I'm like, oh man, they are just zapping your youthful childhood energy. Like you don't even need this. Like adults need it because they like lost their creativity, but you guys are just like, you are it.
yeah.
Like don't be just staring at the screen. Like it's fine to have a culture and like, experience that, but they don't that. And I'm not saying every generation, because this is not true. That's very much a blanket statement, but we could probably be honest that there's a lot of children, especially with this quarantine situation we found ourselves in, that have kind of got themselves isolated, of like just really patterns were formed for the waste of energy to happen very easy. And they're going to be very strong, developed patterns. It's going to take a lot of self-development and self-understanding.
It's going to take a long time. You gave, in a physical sense, you gave a child who has an unlimited amount of charge of this life force a hamster wheel that has them moving and has them applying the force, but to nowhere. And that's what's really rough to watch, because that's what's been dropped right in front of them. It's like, just step into here. And you want to be able to pull them off that and say, hey, you can still use the same amount of energy, but create a force that sort of builds up like waves for the other friends you might meet, or the individuals who need to, interact with this energy. And instead it's like all sucked into this one device or whatever it might be. So I hear what you're saying. I mean, I know we're the same age, so obviously that there's that bias there, but I think you're absolutely right. And it is harder, and it's going to be more difficult for people to find themselves going through challenges that allow them to go through these 7 steps as they come into adulthood, from not being able to apply their energy properly to something that could have helped them evolve along the way, So yeah.
It was like, even just how there is people in our generation though that were so reliable on it as well though. Like I was talking to this one person, we were meeting up, and they were like, oh, I need to stop at a grocery store first. And I'm like, oh, there's one right on the way up. It's on this road. And they were like, no, I'm not finding it. And I'm like, and then so sure enough, they went like way out of their way, had to go and like, not this, like this other one was really mellow. And then they passed it on the way up, and they're like, I don't know why. And I'm like, it's because your Google God is dumb.
Yeah.
Like you've got too much connection, like especially what Google has become, like not so much the idea of what Google was created in the beginning, but it's just like, I'm sorry, Google God's dumb. Like maybe you should stop worshiping Google as like, like your guider and savior of everything.
Yeah.
Your arbitrator of truth.
Right.
So yeah, man, this, that life force energy, I mean, I don't know why I went down that tangent, but like, that's what we're kind of dealing with. And that technology is what we were kind of talking about, is kind of draining it. So this alchemical process stops the spiritual life force from bleeding out. and it allows healing as well as like further accumulation and distribution of that life force energy.
Right.
So this is the source of what you were talking about with the golden fleece in the beginning, right? This is just what the cause of it, right? And that's kind of what we're kind of looking at. But
yeah,
so what we're kind of, when you get to completion, one of the lessons that come with completion is the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
And that's a very deep, smart alchemical principle to start having experience with and sitting with.
Right.
In your meditations, in your traffic, if you're stuck in traffic. Really kind of understanding the completeness of this, because the whole is greater than the sum of its parts is a very old alchemical principle. And that's what you get to witness in the seventh step, because you get to see the completion there.
Right.
So what this step does is it offers a glimpse of the greater stone. And there is such an excitement that kind of comes from this. But really what it is, it's to, when you make statements like this, statements like the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, or who am I? You are not looking for completion to that answer of that question ever, because it's always going to be a more perfect design when you get it. You're looking to how more deeply can you ask that question, and how many more ways can you ask that question? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So you're always just kind of adding energy to where that occult principle kind of makes itself aware. And that's what you're kind of looking at. So the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So from the one towards the one by the means of the one. Right. So that's what we've kind of done through this process. We left consciousness with that cycle of necessity. So from the one towards the one, because that was the whole path, we're making our way back to the one by the means of the one. And what that's really going to kind of show is that, from the one mind towards the one mind by means of the one thing. And those are kind of those alchemical ideas that we were talking about in the beginning. So from the one mind towards the one mind, almost back to the one mind by means of the one thing. And that's the creation aspect. So there is only one thing, and from one way that all things proceed, and into which all things recede. So you get created and then you pull back. Like a star explodes, it becomes a black hole and sucks everything back. It's the cycle of consciousness, right? We breathe in, we breathe out. Like it's the ebb and flow of the universe. So of course that we're kind of going back and looking at that. That's what we would expect to see, that pattern, right? Because that follows universal law. Like to see that pattern of it growing out of it and receding back to it is part of that aspect. So what we're really kind of looking at is the cause of the cause is what we get to witness in this. We were talking about cause and effect, but now through this higher perspective and kind of this rebirth of the phoenix that we're going to kind of get into, we perceive and can connect with the cause of the cause. And that's what we're tapping into. And that's what we're really getting into, that above energy. You're understanding the energy that pushes the waves forward.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like we used to be able to see where the cause was coming, but now we know the pulse that caused the cause.
Right.
Because we've experienced it, because we've traveled, we've risen the axis, and we've made it back down. So we come back with that knowledge. Just like how Dorothy wakes up and it's black and white and she's back on the farm. But she has this knowledge now. She went through the alchemical process. She obtained the trivium.
Yeah.
She got the gold. She got the shoes, and from where she came, she returned. We go out, we come back.
Right.
Right. So that's kind of what we're kind of looking at. So it's the cause of the cause. Alchemically, you'll hear this as the fountain of all fountains.
Yeah.
And I love that one.
Yeah.
Because I know we both talk about it, but we both kind of gush over just watching waves come in. Mm-hmm. Like some of our best conversations, and they've been few, in being in that experience, because we've not always been near a coastline together. But some of our best conversations.
I was thinking about Bondi Beach the other day. So
you're
that's
right. So funny.
I really do remember
Bondi
that. And
Beach.
I was like, we just like sat there for a while. So that was a good
so
time.
Funny.
So that's awesome. You just brought that up.
Yeah, that was the best.
You're right. That
was the best. Much love to Australia, Bondi Beach. You guys are the best. So it's the completion of the process. And through this process, we've now learned the steps of creation, which is in 7, right? And this is again the 7 days of the week. the 7 visible planets, 7, the 7 metals of alchemy. So through seeing this process, you now know the work that God partakes. Right. And that's kind of been the journey. So to know God, you must make yourself equal to God, and not in the aspect that we'll ever be equal to universal consciousness, but more in the aspect of you've learned how creation works. So now if you really want to get to know God, you have to make yourself equal in your decisions, in your thought, your emotion, and your action. And you're always kind of now traveling towards that manifestation, because you're just trying to speed up that process. So the more you think, like, the more you partake in it, and the more you start thinking in this higher consciousness, evolution of consciousness, spiritual alchemist, spiritual warrior mindset, the faster you'll start ascending these next realms that you're going to be using the alchemical process of. Right. And that's what we're just trying to get to. We're trying to get back home. So it's just like, how fast are you going to get back home? Right. So the 7 steps lead to the coagulated king. So he's conquered his own imperfection, and we've united the above with the below. Right. And that's what this whole thing was about, was creating that vertical axis and then moving it up, moving it down, the sacred marriage of heaven and hell. Right. The journeying of opposites on all levels of reality, and all levels of consciousness. Right. So, with that aspect, and what we're kind of looking at is we really are going to, it's really the story of the phoenix. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Right. The phoenix, the lion and the serpent, coming together, right? Or even like the color, the lavender color that comes out of the marriage between, I think, the sulfur and the, why did I just blank? And
the mercury.
The mercury.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you said lavender, right?
Yeah.
And this is why royalty wears purple robes. Was because they knew they were the kings.
The marriage there.
And they were the marriage.
The opposites.
Yeah. And they were tapping into esoteric energy, because why not? It's universal and it's always happening. So there's been classes of individuals that have been tapping into this energy since the beginning. Right. So of course, that's why they used purple and royalty. And that's why you could literally be like punished by death, I believe, if you were caught at certain times in history wearing purple or having like purple cloth. It was only for the kings and the queens, only for royalty.
Very interesting.
Very interesting. Right. I don't even know if I think the aristocracy, which is like the money behind the king and the queen, kind of, in that power, the landowners, I should say. But I'm not sure. I'm sure at some certain times it might have been an absolute monarch that might have, maybe nobody could wear purple, but I'll check that fact. Addendum, right? So we're really having the light that's going to kind of come up and kind of break dawn for us, right? So we have the rising out of that dark night of the soul. And again, think about we were looking at cause and effect, and think about distillation, up and down, up and down. It really had that, that fluid. It was that mercury, but it had a lot of air aspects to it. And that's what's lifting the sun in this final stage, right? And that's what we're kind of seeing. It's the sunrise. And it was darkest, the night's the darkest before dawn. And that's that dark night of the soul aspect, right? We thought it was dark in calcination and dissolution, and a little bit in separation, but really we got like smacked in the face when we met the dark night of the soul, because it was such a deeper cleansing. That was the death and the rebirth, right? That was when the hero dies at the end of the movie and is reborn, which happens in so many things. So the 7 step of completion, how we can kind of look at it, is the first 4 steps kind of separate ourselves from the manifested world. And what did we deal with in the first 4 steps?
The elements, right?
The 4 elements, right? So that's what we were doing. We were just creating a separation and more of a better relationship and a better perspective with the 4 elements, learning their higher aspects and learning where we can get caught in their lower aspects, right? And purifying those. And then the next 3 steps was more of like a reassembly, right? Because there was a further discarding when we made it up to the spiritual world, which was the dark night of the soul, and then a rearranging and the birth of new. And that was That's going to be the next 3 steps. And that's going to be those primordial elements.
Right.
From 4 to 3.
Coming from the above.
Right. And then now we have the marriage of heaven and hell. We've gone to 2. And we're going to be back to 1. Right. When we kind of start this whole thing back over. And kind of what we make the hermaphrodite kind of represents that at this aspect. And that's what you're going to see in like alchemical drawings.
Right.
So I'm sorry, the androgynous, because the androgynous.
I knew what you meant.
Yes, yeah. But we saw the hermaphrodite on the 4th step. The 7th step, once we use the primordial elements for reassembly, the hermaphrodite turns to the androgynous, right? So, and that was dealing with those 3 primordial elements that we covered last week. Sulfur, mercury, and salt.
Right.
And we reassemble it with like this purified essence on this higher level. So that's kind of what we're kind of dealing with in that aspect. So that's kind of give the background. So because that was a really good question. Do you want to ask that first question now, or do you have something else you want to cover first?
No. Once you've made it to gold, to be that final metal and to gold, and you're at that philosopher's stone, you've been touched by something though that I feel like you should be able to turn back to pretty quickly. So my question to Daniel before the podcast had been recorded was, what do you think that is? How do you think you can go back if you think you forget? And we've talked about this before in other steps along the way in this podcast. But yeah, that was my original question, I think. It was like, what do we do once we've forgotten if these steps happen again, if they present themselves, Yeah.
Right. No, and that's a fantastic question, because it's all about the application. So this is something we kind of covered, and it was nice because when we did it on the Patreon, I was able to kind of give a visual. Mm-hmm. But again, I've always used that. I think it's called a concertini. It's like that little accordion, right? Mm-hmm. And this is kind of how this process, I like looking at this alchemical process, right? So if you guys can kind of imagine like a little accordion that you would see in a cartoon, and it's like an accordion without the keyboard, just like the thing that you pull apart and push back together. And if you think about it, we talked about it through the process of like clearing the consciousness. We were just kind of stretching it out and looking at any holes, anything that was, any kind of blockages. So when we started pumping that again and we purified it, it would generate a more beautiful musical note, right?
Right.
So what we've seen through this process is we were like kind of cleaning it at this process, but now what we can do is, because we have this new higher atonement, is that at one moment with consciousness, we've gone through the alpha omega. We've seen creation now. We've seen the infinite, that the beginning is the end, and we've really tapped into that understanding of the infinite. We now, because we've gone through this alchemical process, and even though it took up our entire lives to this point to understand it and get the gold, now it's going to be tough sometimes, but now this is always accessible.
Right.
So just because this process took you 32 years the first time doesn't mean it could take you, in the proper meditation with the proper focus, you can take yourself through the 7 steps, because now you've experienced them, you know how to move them through the musical process. You can get good at this to where, say at first it might be like you need to take a weekend by yourself, but you could make a drastic octave up just by taking a quiet weekend with yourself and being alone with your thoughts and going through this alchemical process. And one of the things we're really going to do is really try to make some visual videos that are planned over the summer to kind of show you exercises, but you just start doing this as almost a yoga routine in your meditation. Mm-hmm. So you can't do this, what you would call the grand meditation, all the time, but that's exactly what you do. You kind of go through the alchemical process, and you can do it almost in one sitting. And then the really spiritual alchemists are going to, at some point, be able to do this within a millisecond, because time isn't constant. So if they can tap into that energy and they are bathing in what we are just getting a glimpse at, they go through the alchemical process and waking consciousness. Right. They are constantly seeing through the eyes of the creator by being tapped into that force and seeing as it collapses, almost perceiving the future if the pattern doesn't change, and understanding the causal factors of the past, and almost can see the nonlinear timeline, which is really existing. Right. And it depends on the patterns that are made in the present for what happens in the future. Right. But they're still going to have this Christ consciousness to almost perceive those patterns. And so you're going to be able to take the work that you just took up to this point, which was like that entire lifetime, like we're talking about. And this alchemical student is just going to take that 7-step process and condense it. And the condensing of it was because that's why we had to pull it out and go all the way down.
Right.
So all we're going to start doing, and then like, it was such an amazing process of like pulling that accordion out, cleaning it, doing everything of the aspect of healing it, even patching up the holes, which we're doing in coagulation. So now we're going to kind of pump it for our first time. And then some people are just going to pump it once. Some people are going to be able to start pumping it twice. And then there's going to be, you have those alchemical, profits almost, that it's constant. You know what I mean? And that's the process of, that is the true Christ consciousness. And you are beyond the astral realm, which is what you would kind of talk about, this next realm, that when we leave our physical bodies, the next realm, the next step of evolution.
Yeah.
The idea alchemically was that you would actually because the work you've done is now astral work, you actually just skip that whole realm and you go right up to the spiritual realm.
Right.
And yeah.
No, go ahead.
And that's unique, and that's like its own other conversation. Like we'll talk about that because we went deep into the cycle of necessity. So we'll kind of start talking about the different ideologies for the lives that come after the physical incarnation and this 5 sense experience, this constructive experience that we need to go through. But that's what we're doing. So that's, if you've gone to this gold, and you're going to have other stuff in your life, and there's going to be times you can't make that happen, but you created this electrical process in your brain you can access again. Like it's going to take hard, and it's going to be almost hard to like carve out that brain the form to like go through it. It's going to be a little bit of a bumpy road, but the more you take that electrical current down the road, the quicker it's going to smooth out.
Right.
And that's your habits. And that's why it's so hard to break a habit. It's just because that brain wave, that form in your brain that runs those neurons is just such a developed constant path that it just goes in there like an instinct.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's why you literally have to like stop your instincts to stop habits. That's why it's so hard. And that's why it takes 21 days, a lot of times people say, which is the Trinity of sevens.
Right.
Funny how that works.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, we meet you again, numerology.
Yeah.
So,
no, that's great. I love the way you're explaining that, because I do see that. The reason I'd ask you that question is because I know that there's individuals who might see this process, and look at it and go, okay, well, there's the steps that I need to take. What after? What comes next? And that's the thing that I think people need to be aware of at all times, is that if you have that Christ consciousness, or you're aware of where you have gone to and come back from, as we're talking about those waves and knowing where the pulse comes from, you can mimic and really apply the pulse yourself to everything else in your life. So yeah, things will go back to whatever it is that you're a part of in society as a human being of this planet, but the energy that you should be working through and from or receiving from should never be a doubt in your mind that it exists or doesn't exist if you don't feel that flow coming through. Because the minute that you feel a blockage from that flow, then that's basically a nice thing to have in your back pocket to remind you, like, hey, you're probably not doing something that's in the best interest of not just yourself, but those around you who need to attain that same visual that you've had, or spiritual journey that's gone from the below to the above and now back down. And I think that's an important step in the thereafter, the seventh. It's like, if you're curious as to what comes next, it's like, yeah, there'll be times, you were saying, that will be a little more dim, but remember where it all comes from, and you'll be able to redirect your life quicker than having to go years into a whole other mess of decisions that you could have avoided, and you realize like, well, was I deceived by something greater to follow these steps after already knowing that the creator is what he is, or is what it is, and the energy that it gives, that works through me as love and everything that we know and define as love, has it betrayed me? And we talked about that, even in fermentation, you're going to have these moments where you feel like, no, I've already been through these steps. Why am I going through such a rough time all over again? That in itself is probably, a message that you're doing something maybe a little bit off from the path that, connects you back to where you've been once before. So that's what I try to remember all the time. Whenever I feel discouraged in that way, or if I've reached the end of this. Because like one thing I'm really curious about, and I'll change gears really quick on you, is that what I was really excited to talk about today is like finishing this after everything we talk about on the podcast, finishing these 7 stages. How do you feel?
Oh, good, man. I feel good. I mean, it's important to kind of step back and look at this process of creation that has just unfolded in front of us. Mm-hmm. So anytime you kind of make it, and we've talked about how that completion is so important, how the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And we have this sunrise, which is always beautiful. It doesn't matter what your night was. You're never upset about seeing the sunrise, right? But even if you're like, oh, that means that deadline is at 8 a.m. Like it's coming. You're still like, but it's pretty. You know what I mean? Like, right. You're like, I need your energy. You're almost calling upon it. So we have this sunrise in the golden metal, right? So the alchemy of the sun. And what happens and what we can kind of manifest through this, which we were kind of talking about, is that sitting meditation, but also that awakening, that walking awakened meditation. Yeah. Right. And kind of that aspect of almost what we would perceive as a wizard or as a witch, right? And we kind of, we've just perceived and just have broken down the process of creation. And because we know that all things come from one thing, which is carbon, which is kind of that base substance, and that's what we were kind of learning about. It's, the difference between a piece of coal and a diamond is the carbon, right? It's made out of the same thing. It's just there was pressure, high pressure that was done to that diamond. So we know that all things come from this one thing. And we know that we partake and are a part of the universe. So if all things come from this one thing, we are made from the one thing. So from the one thing, right? Which was always the process we were looking at in alchemy and now we're coming around to come face to face with this idea. Right. Because we said it, we spoke it in the Emerald Tablet, and we had our understanding of it then, but it gets much deeper once we went through the 7 stages. Yeah. Right. Because if all comes from the one thing, and we see this and we've learned this because we've changed lead into gold. So we've seen this transformation. We've seen the science of transformation in front of us. We now can perceive that for everything to be made from one thing, we must be made from one thing. And if the creation of this one thing is a part of this one thing, we are creators. Right. Right. And so what we've kind of done is you have purified creation. So you've purified the creation. So you know the process of transformation and you understand how it can be now accessed at all moments. Mm-hmm. And this creator aspect is going to be this higher, not like, I don't want to say it's like the overself comes in that we kind of saw in the lesser stone. And this overself that comes in ensures almost the stability of the completion because the whole is now present. So because you've kind of taken the stage as the spiritual warrior, it's going to take you into this next level. And you needed this courage and this discipline to kind of come with you through this aspect. So, we're just having the purification and the access of completion. So as an esoteric student, that's alchemy has been what I resonate with the most. Mm-hmm. And I could pick up, if I read alchemical stuff, I pick it up faster than astrology. I pick it up faster than tarot. Like how I read astrology and tarot, I do through an alchemical lens, because that's how I can start seeing the correspondences, right? So that's kind of my root subject is alchemy. And I kind of speak through an alchemical lens about those other subjects. And there's opposites of me. Like there's people who understand the alchemy through a tarot lens, and it's totally fine. It's what like resonates with you. But myself and my vibration, to be able to complete this process, to be able to talk about this process, to be able just to chat with you about this process for really 14 weeks, because those in between weeks always really corresponded. And we're always just pretty much continuations of what we spoke about the week prior, maybe just breaking it down more in details. But it's a beautiful thing, especially in the time periods we find ourselves in the challenges and the tribulations. But when we can kind of see creation, we understand that from the one thing, everything is created, that comes from the one mind. We partake in that, right? And that connection is how we connect the finite with the infinite, right? That's how we make that heaven and hell combination. And what we're really kind of, as these kind of like sovereign individuals, what we're trying to do at this aspect is really just kind of embody it. And I can't really find the words to it right now, but as an individual, just to study this subject, this was just such a beautiful thing to be able to do, because I know it shot the alchemical process into me like a shotgun. Like it was so fast, and it was going through these experiences through these 2 weeks, and being able to spend 2 weeks on it was really perfect. But it was definitely a good rodeo, which was really fun because I needed the rodeo. Yeah, I needed to stir some things up, and I needed to kind of shake out some cobwebs. So I know there's so much more work to be done, but yeah, as an individual, just to even be thinking about this process again and thinking about this pattern, think about the end of the Emerald Tablet, the miracles of the one thing. Right. Right. And that's what we were dealing with. So we've now seen the miracle. So it's just like, do you believe in miracles? It's like, yes, I do. Yeah. So that's kind of part of that courage and that confidence that comes with that golden fleece, that alchemical glow. Like, you're golden, pony boy. He's been truth in that. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's all very exciting. But what about you? How did you, because for the alchemical process, like how?
Dude, I love how everything you said, there's like no need for me to reiterate, but one thing I was really excited about in the last 4 days, as I was like just kind of rereading everything, I was like, man, this is it's such an important time in my life to understand the 7 stages and be able to really take the time that we needed to break each down. And then I really like how we did this bi-weekly, but one thing that resonates at everything you're saying is to know that it's all from the one, and the one is the whole. I just feel like I'm excited that the whole is in my pocket. Like I can hold it. I can hold the stone. Yeah. And it's in my pocket, but I know it's in yours too. And so like, that has like a really, I don't know, it just has like a very, there's not a real word I can define it, because it's a beautiful thing to be able to share with a friend, right? But there's this, I don't know, there's this like sense of knowing that it's going to be okay in a different way that you might understand the word okay. Okay is such a, a word that we use so commonly used, but I really think there is this sort of serenity to knowing that this is what's in my pocket, and I know that there's going to be things to face with these eyes, but I'm going to make sure I wear a different, set of eyes through situations. And that's what I had to learn through learning the 7 stages by various individuals. I'm so thankful for, being able to have the resources that we have in this day and age to be able to have an understanding of such a complex and beautiful understanding of these phases in life and the connection to the universe and what it's trying to do for you, to do for everyone, and to do for it all in such a rapid time. Like I don't take that for granted. Right. It's like, wow. So that's why I asked you that question. Like, how do you feel? Because it's very reassuring. I think that was the word that was kind of like getting away from me, is that it's not so much knowing that it's going to be okay. It's just the reassurance of having that and knowing that it's there, sits really well with me. And I hope it does for everyone else, so.
Right. And this is just kind of fun to kind of connect it to this, and I don't know if we've ever addressed it on the podcast. We have a blog post about it, but this is why walking under a ladder is 7 years of bad luck. If you fail and you avoid the alchemical process and you see a ladder and you're like, nah, I'm just going to kind of walk this way and go under it. 7 years of the bad luck are the 7 steps of alchemy. So you did a free will decision to avoid raising consciousness. So now you're going to live in that consciousness. You're going to kind of keep walking on that path, and you're going to have to they say 7 years, but it really just meant like a cycle of 7. But that's where that comes down to. You miss the aspect of conscious growth and conscious evolution, and you decided to walk under the ladder. So 7 years of bad luck is just, you're going to stay in those patterns for a given amount of time. It's not always 7 years.
Right.
But that's what that was. That's where that folktale comes from. And it's so funny because we dismiss them, all these wise tales, and people are like, oh, people used to believe that. But sit with these, because if you sit with them, you'll start to perceive the esoteric aspects of it, because they knew what they were talking about when they said it's 7 years of bad luck walking under a ladder. They're not talking about a physical ladder. You know what I mean? They're talking about the ladder in consciousness and the wheels that we walk on.
Yeah.
And you just stay on that it's like staying on a track. And then there's a ladder, and instead of climbing the ladder to a better, more complex track, you just go under it. So it's just okay, well, you're going to stay on this cycle, right? And it's going to hurt because you were supposed to evolve. You have to learn the same lessons again. Well, that means I have to make them hurt more because you're not getting the lesson.
Right.
And I need you to evolve.
Exactly.
You're the one that left, kid. You know, the universe is always you had to go. You had to be independent.
Always reminding you of your mistakes when you're making them.
But it always
aids you as well.
But it also is what pushed you out.
Well, it's always going to meet you. I always think, if you know what the universe has for you, you have to meet it halfway. You can't just sit and let it come to you. You're going to have to put some of the effort, and these 7 stages are guiding principles towards that, and I like that. So on the other end, you're just sort of okay, I guess this is what needs to happen. And there's, you along the way of the 7 stages in a breakdown, you lose an idea of being a victim. I think that's really important because you want to be heard. We all want to be heard, right? We always want to, in one way or another, right? So we want to show that to people. And it's interesting that these stages teach you that there's a time when to ask for help, and there's a time when you need to go through this on your own and not cut corners,
Right.
So.
Yeah. And, what this alchemical process is too is when we think about Star Wars, remember how Luke Skywalker's lightsaber evolved from blue to green?
Oh, yeah.
To the emerald tablet, to the balance of the masculine and the feminine. Because remember, Darth Vader's lightsaber was red. Then his first one was blue. I believe Obi-Wan Kenobi's was blue as well. And so he made that evolution for that emerald tablet, which was the 7th step of alchemy. And that's when he was, he was reborn through that process as well. We have the death and the rebirth in that story. And he, and that's when he can actually conquer the dark, really bring balance to the force, which it's all about, right? And that vertical access. Because when you bring balance to the forces, you create that vertical access and that generation of that energy, because those 2 hemispheres are just fully communicating with each other. And that's all the neocortex, that gray matter is just conductors to tap into your astral substance where your astral mind is, because that's where memories are. So that's why you can access memories through smells that you forgot about, because everything is recorded. And so what it is in that gray matter, it's all these neurons that what they do is they work together to kind of tap into astral realm information, right? And so that's what we're kind of dealing with within that aspect, is the brain is communicating at such a large rate that it's able to get deeper, go to more aspects, all around it, but also higher as well, and start tapping into spiritual and angelic information.
Yeah, no, I love the way you just said that. I really do, man. I'm just smiling because this is the common language that I strive to have with more individuals, is that you're seeing things from the aspect of when you have made things with love and made them with the intention of that higher self. And then you have an appreciation that is so unique that you just wish or hope that others have that same appreciation, because they're seeing that those actions based on those neurons that are firing are being electrically stimulated by a source not seen or perceived by our five senses, but it's felt. Once you know it's there, it can do a lot, and it can do very powerful things and create these waves that we've talked about over and over. And that's what I like about, even when you meet an individual who really truly takes the moment in, and whether it's with like the culinary arts or like a view, there's this moment that you can't deny that literally takes your breath away, because the physical body is almost taking a pause as the astral body has kind of like joined in for a second. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah. And what's cool too is we can do 2001 Space Odyssey now. Because that is the alchemical process. And people always at the end
we talked about
are
Kubrick.
So confused. Yeah. Because they're like, I don't get the ending.
Oh, I can't wait for this.
Yeah. But now when you like see it, you're like, oh, I totally get the ending.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a deeper one. The more you watch it, the deeper it will go. But fascinating stuff.
Yeah, man.
Right?
I can't wait. There's so much on the agenda, and we appreciate how patient everyone has been through these 7 stages. I know there's so much information on these stages, and like all the information we talk about on this podcast, you can, go down your own rabbit holes and figure out what your thoughts are on such subjects that we bring up. But this one in particular has been just an honor to do with you and do with the whole audience at the same time, So we thank you for your listening ears and wanting to just raise it to the next octave,
Right. And we're there with you every step of the way. And you're with us, which is so amazing as well.
Exactly. So,
we are just so grateful for all of you. And such an exciting time to kind of we just completed the steps of alchemy. It's just it's that completion of the stellar, sovereign individual, and the journey back home.
Yeah. Now that we have another set of lenses on, I'm excited to sort of go deeper as we go higher, though. It's like at the same time those that axis just goes as it touches, it still reaches down below. We talk about that, and we'll be doing that. Truly, on the podcast, it'll be recorded. It already has been for the last almost year, and so I'm excited to sort of see where we take this next.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, well, cool, man. There's nothing else I need to add to this, but yeah, I'm excited for the next coming weeks. We'll be having probably. Well, actually, I don't know what's for the next coming weeks.
Like what? Yeah, no, we have to decide, which is interesting because we haven't had to do this for a while because it's been like alchemy, and we've always kind of known what we were going to do in between. So we know we need to address the Kabbalah. We know we need to address the tarot. We still haven't gone through the astrological signs and done a whole conversation on those. We've done the planets, but just the visible planets. So we could really kind of start working into next octave stuff, which is what Neptune represents, and Uranus, right, and Pluto. We'll kind of get together and kind of see where it's going to go. But the most amazing thing is there's just, it's endless for information,
right?
So we can go so many different ways. I really want to look into, the sacred feminine in that aspect. I also I was talking to this great group of people last night who are listeners to the show and talking about African spirituality and kind of getting back to that really root civilization and where the source of all of it kind of comes from. And I think that would be a great thing to see the connections with and check in with and tap into that spiritual information and just try to get as many different lenses so we get the more complete picture, because remember, the whole is greater than the sum of those parts.
Yeah, man.
Right? And so with knowing that knowledge, we're going to, from the beginning, go to the, from the end, go to the beginning. And we walk into the door, out the door, and in at the door at the same time. And that's kind of what we're dealing with. And just so exciting.
Yeah, no, I know we talked that after we would finish the 7 stages, we'd definitely move into what we're going to plan for the second season. And so, again, I know that once we we put out a few more episodes in this season, we'll sort of have a better idea of what the approach is going to be for the next 52 episodes that we got going.
Yeah, because we got numbers, we have the Hebrew alphabet. Yeah. Oh man, it's so just much. I'm so excited.
Yeah,
I want to quit my job right now.
You can move in here, man.
You're the best.
Cool, man. Well, it's been an honor, man. So seriously, it's been really great. But yeah, with that being said, until next time.
Until next time.
Cool, man.